Hello and welcome to Conversations from the Adoption and Fostering podcast. In this episode, Earl shares his journey to adoption with his wife. As US citizens living in the UK, there have been false starts and challenges. However, they're now parents to 3 children. And it's their story and reflects their views and experiences. And if you'd like to share your story, please get in touch through the Facebook page or Twitter page, or you can email us at aandfpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, so my name is Earl Robinson, and my wife, Rebecca Robinson. We've been married for 24 years now, and we're proud parents of 3 girls, aged 9, 7, and 4. And for us, adoption is a big part of our story. So that's why I'm sharing my story this evening. We were married back in Indiana, so that's part of our story. Is while we live in the UK, we grew up in America. I grew up in New York State, and she grew up in Indiana and Michigan. And we lived in Indiana for about 10 or 11 years, and then moved to this country. We were asked to move to England to lead a church. So we both left our jobs. We were both elementary school teachers in Indiana and really loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was great working with kids. Rebecca was a kindergarten, or year R in this country. Did that for 9 years, and I taught 7 and 8-year-olds and also 12-year-olds. And so we were around children a lot. We were really used to kids. We were with them. We also had a great opportunity to lead the youth at our church. So that was teenagers, and we did that right off the bat after getting married. So quite young. Here I was 22, helping lead 17 and 18-year-olds. So grew up quite a bit during that time as well. And we really loved being with the teenagers. Did that for about 8 years. Led trips to Mexico and Canada and Dominican Republic and inner cities in America. So we had a lot of experience with that age group too, and loved them. What we didn't have were our own children. So while we were consistently around children of all ages and friends' children as well, babysitting and so on, and being the first one to call to babysit, which was great, we didn't have our own. But we also knew that we couldn't at that time. Medically, we didn't feel we could, so that we understood. But we also ended up coming to England for 1 year to go to Bible college, which meant we gave up our jobs and sort of gave up our life in America for 1 year, and then did that in 06, 07. And at that point, we were like, what do we do next? But we knew we couldn't adopt at that point because we had been living in the UK for a year. As it turns out, I went back to Indiana for 1 year, and I taught again, Rebecca taught again, and it was during that year we were asked then to move back to the UK. And so we officially left Indiana. We said goodbye to our friends, said goodbye to our parents. We didn't own a house, didn't own much. So we basically turned up in the UK with 2 bags each, my guitar and my winter coat, and moved into a little cottage in the village that we live in, and started life, literally started life again. We didn't know where that was going to take us. But in referencing adoption, we knew that it meant that we could not adopt from the UK because we just moved here. But it also meant we couldn't adopt from the US because we didn't live there either. And so once again, our desire to have children was not going to be met at that point. Interestingly enough, when we first came here, we ended up working with kids again a lot. And so we were constantly around kids, whether it was in the local schools or whether it was me running youth groups here. And once again, that need to be with children and to feed into them and them feed into us was being met. But again, not our own. What I should say, though, is it wasn't only just about meeting our need. We also really felt that we were called to adopt, too. It was something that we had wanted to do for a long time. We admired people that we knew that had adopted and had fostered. And so it was important to us that we did that, not only just to get our own need, but also there's the helping of society around you, helping of children around you. But we were in that crux point where we'd lived here, couldn't adopt here, didn't live in America, couldn't adopt there, and it was really quite confusing to us. So we had a conversation with friends of ours who lived in Cameroon at the time, and they had adopted when they lived in America. And I'll never forget it. We were driving through London, Putney Bridge, and they said, well, what about you guys? Are you going to adopt? And I just got ready to answer the question that they asked me. And we hit really heavy traffic, and then we got to where we were going. And then we got back in the car to drive back home, and it never came back up again because we were talking about what we did that day. And just as we pulled into their driveway here, back home, they said, oh yeah, you never answered that question about adoption. And so we answered them and said, well, we want to. And we ended up praying together with them. And from that point, we said, you know what, we're going to look into maybe we could do something in America. They adopted in America. Maybe we could, even though we don't live there. It seems far-fetched. So I got online the next day, and we looked, and lo and behold, we found what we thought was an option in America. And we called up this adoption agency and told them our situation. And they said, that sounds really unique. You're living in the UK, but you want to adopt from America. So it's sort of reverse of international adoption. It's some other kind of adoption, which we don't see very often, but yeah, let's work with you. Sounds good. What you'll need to do is need to fill in all the forms, so on and so forth, and then come back to Indiana for a month, do all the training. We'll smash that into 1 month and get you approved, and then you're on the list, and then you can adopt. So we thought, wow, we're going to do this, even though we're living in the UK, even though we're leading a church here, even though it doesn't seem to make sense. This is what's going to happen. And so we broke the news. It was on Thanksgiving Sunday here at our church. Broke the news, and of course, everybody was ecstatic because Earl and Rebecca were going to jump into this, the murky waters of adoption. And of course, we didn't have a lot of information other than to say, yep, we're starting the process, but we don't know when. And of course, when you're adopting, that's one of the main questions people ask is when? When will you know more? When will you have a child? When will this? When will that? But you don't really know. And so we entered into that. We got all the paperwork done. We took a month off to go and live in a house there in Indiana. We did all the meetings. We met the people we needed to meet. We did home study in a home that we had been in for one night, which was really interesting. But they called it our home, and it was okay. And essentially what happened was we were approved. We were approved to adopt from America. The system there is different, so I need to explain that a little bit. The system there essentially is that young mothers will contact an agency because they don't want to give up. They don't want to abort the baby. They want to have the baby, but then they feel they can't keep the baby for some reason. And so they will give the baby to the agency. As they do that, they will essentially look through the notebook or look through the profiles that the agency has on file, and they'll choose a family that they want to connect with. And so they told us, our agency said, you guys are unique, so you'll either stand out or no one will really choose. And I remember we got a couple phone calls really quick, and we were thinking, oh my word, it is. Here it is. Here's the call. And it was just them asking like some kind of administration question. And then one time we were in a meeting and we got pulled out of the meeting because we got a call from the agency. And it's like, oh, what is it? Yeah, I just wanted to verify this one thing on your form. And we're like, yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks. We'll let you know if we get any calls. And that was quite deflating. What was really difficult was walking around our village, seeing people that knew we were doing this, because it became quite known around the village. Seeing people that we knew that were doing this and basically being able to say nothing to them other than, yeah, we're waiting. Yep, we're waiting. Yep, we're waiting. And waiting turned out to be a huge aspect of our story. And I think it is for most adoption stories, to be honest. So we waited and got quite demoralized and got quite saddened by it. And I do remember the times when it got to where we were almost didn't want to go out where we lived. So we would purposely go somewhere else out to eat and so on. We just didn't want to run into people. We didn't want to have to feel like we were letting everybody else down. Yet it wasn't theirs to be let down in, but we felt like we were letting people down, which was a sad thing. I felt like I was letting the church down in some way, because here we were going to adopt. Our church wasn't going great guns at that point, had hardly any children at all. And so we felt like we were at a bit of a dead end almost. And I think probably people thought we would go back to America, that we would leave the UK. And I probably thought we would too. But because we hadn't really heard from God that we were supposed to go back to America yet, we decided to stay here. And we went to a meeting way up north, up near Middlesbrough. And there was a guy that spoke on the Sunday morning. Every now and then in life, there's those times that you remember as though it happened yesterday. And the guy that spoke, he was speaking about Abraham. And in the Bible, Abraham basically listens to God and chooses to go about 1,000 miles south. He leaves his homeland and he goes to a place and then calls that a new home, and he lives in tents. And what this guy was speaking about, he was speaking about people who are living in the UK, leading a church or involved in a church, but they're willing to go somewhere else in the country to do something in the church. And that couldn't be us. The only way we were in this country was because of our visa, saying that we could leave the church we lived in, that we worked in at that time. If we left that, we'd have to leave the country. There was no other reason we were allowed to be here, legitimately. Yet, when he said, if that's you, during this, at the end of the meeting, if that's you, can you please come forward? We'd like to pray with you. And both Rebecca and I looked at each other, and we both stood up almost in unison and walked forward. And it was a really weird time. As we walked forward, I remember thinking to myself, why am I walking forward? I can't even go anywhere else. I legitimately can't move unless I want to leave the country and leave my job. I can't go anywhere. And he even pointed us out. He said, oh, look at that. There's Earl and Rebecca. They moved here from America. They're still willing to go. And I'm thinking, but we can't even do it. So it was on the way home, on that long 5-hour drive home, that we were talking. And what we determined was that we basically were saying we were going to stay in the UK at that point. We were going to change what was our visa to be a leave to remain visa, which means we can stay here as long as we want, as opposed to if 5 years is up, we have to leave. What that also meant, though, and we knew that meant, we had to abort the process in America. So we had to give up our hope of adopting in America to live here instead, and not knowing what that meant for us, but knowing that that was the right move for us. So for about a couple of months, we mulled that over. That's not a quick decision you make, but we called our agency in America and we talked to them and said, you know what? We don't feel this is going to happen. We also don't feel like we're supposed to come back to Indiana right now. So we're going to stay here. So we're actually going to have to stop the process. And they were like, yeah, you need to do what you need to do. Problem was, for us, we didn't have anything else in the pipeline then. But Rebecca had heard a man speak at that same conference. His name is Krish Kandaya, and he leads the Home for Good charity. And he'd written a book called Home for Good, which I think we'd probably read at that point. And he had mentioned in passing in a lunch that she had attended, oh, by the way, for those of you who are living in the UK, but you're not British citizens, there may be a road for you to adopt through the British system as well. But he didn't really give any more information. He just sort of dropped that into the conversation that he was having with this smaller group of people over lunch. And she remembered that. So we thought, well, maybe there is a path to adoption for us in this country, even though we're Americans now living in England. And so we mulled that over for a while as well. Had a friend of mine who had adopted here, and we were out playing a little bit of golf, and he said, "Oh, you ought to look into this agency we went with and just see what they say." I said, "Well, you know what? We don't have our paperwork. We haven't been here long enough. I don't really know what I'd tell them other than, hey, I can't do this, but here I am." And so I did. I gave him a call, and I remember Rebecca was at a little gathering of some women that morning, and I decided I'm going to give this agency a call. And I did, and I told the lady on the other end our story a bit. And she said, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. So as you know, because you don't have all your paperwork done, because you don't have your visa yet, we can't really work with you until it's done." And then she said, "Oh, hold on, my boss is just walking past," and hung up the phone or put it down. And so I just sort of sat there on hold for a minute or so, and then she came back to say, "I was wrong on that. Because you already know where you're headed with this and know that you're going to be filling in all that paperwork, we are happy to work with you. So if you'd like to come and have an intro meeting with us, and then we'll get you on the list for orientation, and you'll be off and running." I called Rebecca. I said, "Hun, I just had a phone call, which means that we can work here. We can get into the process here." And it floored us because we were not expecting that at all. So it changed our mindset, really, from one of, "Oh man, where are we going with this?" to, "Wow, where are we going with this?" Which was a real beautiful thing. So that led us then into starting to work with the system in this country, which we found out was quite different as well. We had to do the whole home study again. So for those people listening that have done the process and you know what it is, it can be quite long. It can be a lot of meetings. It can be a lot of shuffling your diary. It can be a lot of answering the same questions over and over. And we'd done all that once, and so we did it again. It proved to be really good. Interestingly enough, just as we were getting involved in the process, we ended up having to move, which we were not expecting at all. The place that we were living we had set it up perfectly for adoption. We had our bedroom, a lady that we lived with who had her bedroom, a spare bedroom set up as a nursery, and another bedroom that was there in case we needed it. And it was just right, and it was going to be perfect. And then we were told we had to move. And so what do you do with that? Well, we sat on it for about a week and a half, or about 6 weeks. My parents came to visit during that time, and it was really confusing. And we decided, let's pray about this. And we mentioned it to the local vicar, and he didn't know anybody. And then we saw him the next day, and he stopped me in my tracks and said, "Earl, I just found out about a 3-bedroom house here in the village. Are you interested?" I said, "You told me there's nothing." He said, "Yeah, a lady came up to me today and said that she'd like to have her daughter christened before they leave the village. They're going to put the house on the market, but they happened to mention it to me. If I knew anyone, to please let them know." So we went down and saw the place that night, signed on it that night, and had a place to rent. As it turns out, it was the only house that came up for rental the whole summer, the only 3-bedroom place. What it meant was we didn't have to stop the adoption process that we had just started. And it also meant that our first our first home study meeting was in our old house. Our second home study meeting was in a house that we lived in for 2 weeks. And our third home study meeting was in the new house that we had literally just moved into. So it really proved it wasn't about the house, it was about us. And we ended up being able to live there quite miraculously, which was a beautiful thing. So we've seen wonderful answers to prayer in our story, whether that be from not knowing what our next move is to literally not knowing what our next move is to finding a house. And so it was at that point then that we felt like this is really going somewhere. This adoption seems to be working. The home study process is going well. We seemed to be getting on well with the social workers. We really appreciated them. Felt that they were on our side. They understood our story. They recognized what we'd gone through with doing the whole process in America, then having to back out of that. They realized that we had been married a long time, so knew each other quite well, and also knew what we could bring to the table as parents, and also what we would be bringing children into, which was a real loving church community and loving village. So again, we felt that was all going quite well. And as it was, we did. We got approved. And I remember, it's just such an exciting point. You feel like you've gotten somewhere when you've gone through all those meetings, when you've sat through and filled in all the paperwork, and you've done all the driving to meet people and to be at places. And so that felt really, really good. And so then we were entered into the Family Finder program that they had, and also where you start to receive all of the different children through email, and you see all their information. So that was different, because that was so unlike the American process, where the American process was all about a mother choosing an agency and then choosing you. You were being chosen. Now, it was totally different. We were now the ones doing the choosing. We'd already gone through everything, and now we were the ones doing the choosing. And we found that to be really difficult. And my guess is that other adopters find that difficult too. I think when you read the stories of kids who need a place, we know that they're in the system for a reason, and it's not usually a good one. And so when you read those, it can be quite horrific, and it can really stick with you. And we started to feel quite down. It's like, how do we ever decide? How do we determine which one of these we wanted siblings? Which one of these sibling pairs are for us? How do we narrow it down? Or essentially, how do we come up with reasons to say no to kids that need a place, to kids that need a forever family? What do we do with that? And so we actually took the foot off the gas pedal for a little while and just waited. And we stopped opening up every email that came through. And I'll bet other adopters have done that too, where you literally open every single one, and then it's like, wait a second, we can't do this. We can't read these stories every night. And so we waited, and there were a sibling pair that we thought, yeah, this is good. And got a phone call saying, yeah, that's not going to work out for you. And we're like, all right, that's okay. We'll see about the next one. And so we did. We found a sibling pair that seemed to be some ones that resonated with us. We felt peace about moving forward with that. And so we contacted the agency, and so they contacted their local authority, as you do. And then we didn't hear anything for a little while. And then I remember I was at the gym one day, and it was back before kids, so I could go to the gym, which we both really enjoyed doing in that stretch. And I was in the gym, I had my headphones on, and one of the workers in the gym just came and tapped me on the shoulder. I was like, yeah, what? She's like, you have a phone call from your wife. I was like, okay, is this a good phone call or bad phone call? She's like, she seems pretty excited. I was like, great, okay. Because, if you ever get that kind of, hey, you have a phone call, it's either really good or really bad. I go down there, and the phone, it was Rebecca, and she said, Earl, they've contacted the local agency. Local agency wants to meet us. They want to come down and see us, and they want to do it like next week. And so all of a sudden we're like, whoa, this is truly happening. So of course I quickly get in the car and race home so we can talk. And we start to put everything in place to meet them. As it turns out, something happened and they got delayed by 3 weeks. And so we didn't actually meet them for a month. But we were ready when they came. And that was a really wonderful time to meet the people who were they were in charge of our girls at that time, and they were in care of them. And so to meet them, and for them to meet us, to exchange our stories, and for them to say, you know what, we would love to proceed with you guys. We think that you are the right ones we want to proceed with. And so at that point, then the conversation really changed between Rebecca and I, away from, will this ever happen? How will this happen? To when will this happen? And at that point, you're no longer opening up the emails that come through every single day with these stories of children that need somewhere. We already had our own story then that we were working with. And so what ensued then was what happens, I think, with most adopters. You really start to plan. You start to say, okay, what do we need? We need beds. We need this. We need that. And you can also start to tell all these people that are like, when are you going to hear something, Earl? You can start to tell them, actually, we are hearing something. We're going to have some good news here really soon. We don't know when, but it is happening. And so that was quite exciting, if I'm honest, to be able to have good news, to have something solid. I blogged all throughout our process. So from the very beginning, I set up a blog. And it's what I eventually wrote a book called Our Road to Adoption. And I remember blogging through that time, and it was so different to have good news to share and something solid to share instead of, yep, we're waiting. Hey, everybody who reads this blog, you've read the same thing for the last year. Actually, now here's some new information. So that was a wonderful thing. So we did what you do, where you go and travel and meet people in local authority. And then came the time when we were going to go to the introductions. And that, of course, is a wonderful thing as well. There is a portion of our story, though, that I skipped over. And it's a portion that was really difficult for us. And it was about a month long. And it was the portion after panel. So with panel, for those of you that adopted, it's pretty much a done deal once you get to that point. But for us, there was a bit of complication. And so the people were in the panel room and we were waiting outside. And some of the members felt that actually we might not be the right people to be approved to adopt. And we were really surprised by that. And our social worker stood in our corner and said, you know what, you need to meet these guys. You need to have them come in, have them tell their story and open up who they are. And I know that you'll feel they're right. And so she did. She worked it to where we did get in the room. We did share. And they did like us. But they didn't unanimously approve us to be adopted. So while we had waited, there was this 1 month, and it happened to be the month of my 40th birthday in April, where we still didn't know. So while I jumped the gun and told the story there where we are starting to go do the introductions, there was this one really bleak month, which I passed over while I was telling the story, maybe because I didn't want to recall it, to be honest. But it was truly, do we get over the finish line here? Or the starting line, or the ending line, whatever line you want to call it, do we get over that and carry on? Or do we just get stuck again? And for a month, it was like, oh man, where's the phone call? Where's the email? Where's the phone call? Where's the email? And nothing. And then I was outside at our old house doing something outdoors. I was trying to put a ground spike into the ground so we could hang this error for our laundry. And I was fighting with this thing, so I'd already had problems with it once before. And I heard this yell from inside, but it was a good yell. I said, what's that? And Rebecca said, we got the call. We're approved. And I came full, I threw my hammer down, forget about the ground spike, and we went out that night. And we invited a bunch of people to join us at the Indian, and we shared our story. And so that bleakness so quickly turned to light. And it was at that point then that we were able to start looking at the children possibilities. So I want to make sure to go back and tell that portion, even though I'd skipped over that on accident. So now fast forwarding back to where we have the girls that we'd like to adopt in sight. And so we've lined up to go and to do the starting introductions. And what an emotional time that is when you go from not having any children of your own to you're going to meet these people. They're living, they're breathing, they're already formed in some respect. They already know what their favorite color is. They already like certain cartoons, and you're going to meet them, and then they're going to be your family, and you're going to be their mom and dad, and they're going to be your children. And so there we were, staying in the B&B, and the next day we knew it's the day. And so we're driving to the place that morning for the first time, and it's like, I don't remember if we talked much, because I think it's like, this is really nervous, but it was a really short 5-minute drive. We got there, and the first thing we heard when we opened the door was, "Mommy, Daddy." And we were, that's like floored material, because we were not expecting that. We'd heard the stories that, kids sometimes come around, it takes a while, man, right from the get-go. They just said, "Mommy, Daddy." And it set us up on a wonderful week and a half, 2 weeks, getting to know them. And then them moving into our home within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And the level of change that children bring can't be understated. And it wasn't just change for us, and it wasn't just change for them. It really changed our church as well. As we became much more child-friendly, we started doing outreach to families, to children. It opened up for Rebecca and I, the social side of life just exploded. Because what you don't realize when you don't have kids is you can't go to the park. You can't go to Paulton's Park, Peppa Pig World, where we started to go and really enjoy. If you do go to the park and you're a single guy, why are you there? You just can't do it. Once you have kids, absolutely, you can talk to anybody you want there. It's just free game. You can't go and hang out at the school gate. Why are you there? Once you have kids in the school, of course you're there. So it just opened up so many new relationships for us, and opportunities for us, and friendships for us. And wow, what a change. It was beautiful. What it also did was, what a change for the girls to come out of the situation they were in, to now living in this new home with us, the lady that we lived with who loved them like an auntie, a whole church that just couldn't wait to meet them, other people that had known our story that were just like dying to see us walking down the street. "Oh, is that them? Oh, is that them? Oh, look at that, Earl and Rebecca are pushing a buggy," that kind of thing. And so the change for them was just immense. They left everything they knew to come to this little village and start life again. So there's obviously a lot of bumps and bruises along the way with that, because they have lost a lot, and they've also gained a lot, but they've also lost a lot. And so trying to mediate that as mom and dad, where you're immediately mom and dad from the get-go, is a real hurdle and a real mountain to climb, but one that's worth climbing. So we had the girls for quite some time, and life just was happening. School was happening, nursery was happening. Able to go back to America and meet people there a couple times, and being part of clubs and doing the stuff you do as families. And Rebecca drops this comment on a Sunday night one time, said, "You know what, I think we can do this. We can do this." Lo and behold, the next day we get a phone call from the agency saying, "Just to let you know, your daughters, the birth parents, are pregnant again, and we'd like to know if you'd be interested in having a third." And that took us by surprise. We were not expecting that. When we were going to adopt from America, it was always going to be one, because you don't choose there, they choose you. Here, when the social worker said, "Well, would you like 1, 2, 3?" And we're like, well, we didn't know we could choose. Let's go with 2, because that was a dream of ours. And then here we are approached, how about a third? So we prayed about that, and I came around much slower. I think Rebecca was like, "Yep, let's do it." And I was like, "Wait a second, what does this mean? we're going to move back into having a really little one. We've sort of moved beyond that now. We understand what we're doing. We know how to parent these two. And what are we going to do if we had a third? But we said, yes, let's do this. And basically went through the home study again. So went through the whole process. They did chop the process a little bit, thankfully for that. But there was new information to share. We were, how is it going to work with siblings? How is it going to work with life then at that point? But we got approved for it. Fantastic. And we told some friends in America, and we were doing a trip to America. And just before we leave, we get this information from our adoption agency. Yeah, just obviously you guys are the ones that the plan is, but so that the local authority doesn't look as though it's already a done deal, they need to go through all their due processes. So you won't actually hear anything for a number of months, but thank you. We'll let you know when we know anything. And we didn't hear a thing for like 4 months. So here we are, knowing that we're adopting again, not knowing anything about who this child is, not knowing if they've been born, not knowing if they're healthy. We've told a few people, but not very many. And so we have this massive secret that we're going to have another child. So it's a bit like someone who's going to have another child, but doesn't show at all, and nobody knows they're actually pregnant. So in our minds, like, man, when is this going to happen? And again, as things happen, you get the phone call and says, yeah, it's go time. Can you guys be up here for introductions in 3 weeks? And all of a sudden it's like, oh my word, we're going to have a 6-month-old in like a month. So it's essentially having a 1-month pregnancy to have a 6-month-old. So we had seen a picture of her, and she was not what we expected. She was a lot bigger. She's like, man, she's really, really big. And so we couldn't wait to meet her, and went up and did the introductions. This time we had our other 2 daughters with us, and friends from our church came so they could watch our other 2 girls, because it was just going to be way too much for them to meet their sister and to just be around that whole time. It was way too emotional for them. But we were really blessed to have friends there. And so they came with us, and we met her, and then we told our girls, said, hey, you guys get to meet her tomorrow. We're going to go over there and meet her, and then we're going to go hang out. We're going to go to a soft play. And actually, you know what? She's going to be living with us. So this isn't just a hangout for the weekend. She's moving into our home. She's moving into our family. We're going to be a group of 5. And that's exactly what happened. She came home with us. We found out about it late October. She was in our home by late November. And we quickly turned a room into, or a space in our bedroom into her space, and turned into a family of 3 children. And it changed things quite a bit. Again, for our girls, it changed for them a lot. And for our youngest, who's now into year R, we've seen obviously her change dramatically. But for us, it was really interesting, because we went from as we got older and older and older, and then our girls got younger and younger, and all of a sudden here we are with a 6-month-old. And so it actually opened up new friendships for us, new relationships, and we're hanging out with 20 and 30-year-olds, yet we're nowhere near that age. But it was wonderful, because our kids were. And one of the great things we've done since we had her was we really wanted to do something that involved her as well. And so we started up a parent and toddler group in our village, and that was really successful. Met a lot of great people through that, and felt like it was the right thing. That's that, along with everything else that's gotten shut down with coronavirus. But we still want to start that up again, and we look forward to doing it without having our own child there. I think that'll be wonderful. So just to bring the story then into a land, it's been a wonderful thing. It's been a huge change for Rebecca and I. Obviously, it's been a huge change for the girls. It's been a big change to the church. And it's been, I would say, one of the most impacting things we've ever done. We've left jobs and we've moved to new countries, so we've done things in our life. But to adopt and to be a family of five that all get in the car and go together somewhere has been a beautiful thing. And it's opened up some wonderful doors. Writing the book has opened up a lot of doors, and gotten involved with Home for Good as a champion and helped start up a fostering and adoption support network in our area, and have met loads of other wonderful people. And hopefully we've encouraged scores of people through this time, through our story. So that's really why I wanted to share our story with you this evening.
I know that between the US and the UK, there's more than just system differences. There's kind of quite a lot of cultural differences. And so how did your friends and family sort of look at you adopting from the UK? How did they feel about it? Did they see it as something as quite significantly different?
Our friends and family were really tickled pink when we were going to adopt from America, because they really wanted what was best for us. And so when that process didn't work out there, I think they were saddened, much like we were. And also, much like us, our friends and family didn't really understand that we could adopt here either. So I think they felt that it was sort of the end of the road when we had to stop the process in America. So when we were able to start it up in the UK, it was almost like, great, let's give this a shot. It was almost that kind of feel. And there wasn't anyone that said, oh my word, I can't believe you're doing that. Rather, it was great. Hopefully this works, because I know you guys really want to do this. We didn't realize probably in the long run how much it would frame who we are in this country.
Yeah. Because
we went from just being Earl and Rebecca, who moved to the UK and lead a church here, to now many of the people we meet being, oh, Earl and Rebecca, oh yeah, your mom and dad to so-and-so. And that's now who we're known as. So whether that would children from the UK or children from USA, I think people just were really happy to see us be mom and dad.
Cool. I was going to ask as well, because I know it's in the US, it's National Adoption Month, isn't it? Because we're recording this in November. And I'm conscious that I kind of see lots of adoptees from the US, and there's especially transnational adoptees in the US. There's often really complicated narratives around identity, and states have different legislation about citizenship and all of those complicated issues. Has that been an issue about, their UK citizens, your US citizens, and is that a difficult sum?
Yeah, today is actually World Adoption Day, which I hadn't realized until I was on Facebook earlier.
All right.
Yeah, so a lot of adoptions in America certainly do happen international, and people will often adopt from Asian or African countries, and there's a lot of hurdles there. Another huge aspect, which I didn't share in our story, there's a lot of money there. That costs a lot of money, and there's a lot of fundraising that happens. A huge difference in the UK is it's free. It's essentially you're doing a service for the country. You're helping local authorities and so on. So that was a massive difference. We thought we'd have to do all kinds of fundraising to adopt from America. Ended up dropping out of that process and doing the UK process, and didn't have to pay to do it. So that was a huge bonus, which we didn't even realize was a difference. What it means, the fact that we're American and our girls are British, at the moment, it doesn't matter all that much. It means we go through different, we get to use both aisles when we use passports. So right now, it's not a huge deal. We do want to all be the same nationality at some point. So we would like to probably become citizens sooner than later here. Equally, we also would want them, if they want to live in America and if we go back, want them to be able to come with us. So I believe the way it works right now is they can't become American citizens until we're all living in America for a period of time. And obviously once once 18 kicks in and people are adults, they can choose to do what they want to. But we don't want to end up moving back to America and not be able to take our girls. Hence, we want to become the same nationality as them because they are British, and that was one of the caveats is they can't lose that. So they can add American, but they can't lose their Britishness.
Right.
So we're a highly unique family. Two Americans living here with 3 British kids. They all have the accents. We all have the American accent. Rebecca and I have the American accents, and people just don't know whether they're coming or going when they meet us.
That's fair enough. Well, that's really interesting, and you've answered my question, so thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been good, Al.